There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. She was Bombalurina on the U.S. National Tour 6 before COVID of Cats, so welcome, Lexie Plath, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I've talked to a few people on your tour. It's kind of a fascinating tour because it was cut short. You know, like it was going on right after the Broadway finished. It was a continuation, I feel, of that tour, but it's not the other version of the U.S. National Tour 6 that came on after that was non-equity. So I love also those starting, though, with everybody I talked to of your introduction to the show. So what was the first time? Was it the 1998 movie? Was it a touring production growing up? When did you first see it?
Oh my gosh. I have been dancing my whole life. And my mom owns a dance studio. So I grew up like listening to the soundtrack from like day one. I had the VHS, like wore it out. It was the first live show I ever saw. I saw the national tour in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And we knew the guy who was playing Mistopheles. So he brought me backstage and the Cats painted my face. And It was like the most magical moment. I was probably 5, maybe 6 years old. And Bombalurina actually painted my face, which is insane. And then it was my first lead role I ever did in high school. I played Bombalurina and we won the USA Today Best High School Musical. And then I got to play Bomb on the tour. So it was kind of crazy, full circle life with Cats for me.
Okay. So there's a lot here. I got a lot of follow-up questions. So let's do them in order. Let's start with you're 5, you're in Milwaukee, you're seeing a tour.
Yep.
So you're getting the Midwest take on tour production, which is, you know, I didn't see the Midwest, but I'm from Indiana, so I had the same type of like, that's what rolls through. How much as a 5-year-old did you get of the story? And what was that aha moment when you started learning like, oh, wait, this is a very different story than childhood you got to notice?
Yeah, I think, it was like probably one of my first times in like a real live theater.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was magical already, not being in front of like a screen, you know?
Yeah.
But having I knew the music, so it was partially familiar to me. At that point already, and I had seen the film, so I was like already aware, and I think it was just like the whole spectacle of like almost feeling like you're a part of it versus watching it was crazy.
And you got to double that and amplify it by going backstage before the show, after the show. When did you do this?
Oh, I don't remember.
Okay, because I think
it was probably after it had. Well, I don't know. The Cats were still in their makeup and costumes, so maybe it was before.
Yeah, that's such a unique experience in itself of being able to go and meet the cast and kind of see behind the scenes too. Because like as a 5-year-old, it's probably almost hard to comprehend the difference. It's like, oh, they're performers, but also they're cats, and then you kind of go and see them in their element and on stage and in the junkyard, but then also backstage. So that's a really cool experience. All right, I got a lot of questions about high school production.
Yes.
What did they tell you? Like how much of a high school production is story versus dance?
Well, I don't know. So my high school theater department was like pretty intense. It was like not pre-professional because we were like a public high school, but it was like a very arts focused group, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had a professional choreographer come in and he like set it on us. So like it was very dance heavy as the show is in general. But because we also had like kids who weren't dancers who were just like in the high school drama department who were more singer actors, you know, like there was emphasis put on the story than I think probably would normally have been because they needed something to do if they weren't doing the big dance numbers too. So like we had a huge ensemble, like more than a normal show. And they like gave everyone random names. Like my best friend Lauren was Cinnamon and like just, you know, picking random names for cats and they would like assign it. And then I remember we had a whole day where we had to create our own backstory for what our character was and like, who's your owner? Like, where are you coming from? What color are you? Like all different kinds of things that they got to like create for themselves for characters who like don't actually exist. So that was kind of cool.
Do you remember any of the backstories? Like what did people create? What did you create first for Bombalurina?
I remember me and my Demeter, we decided that we had the same owner because we had matching collars, which I feel like is probably close to what I did on tour too. But yeah, that's what I remember. I feel like we had like an old rich lady owner.
Okay, were you siblings? Did you decide siblings or not? Okay, well, tell me what do you remember about Cinnamon?
Not much. I remember she was like brownish yellow. Yeah, she just kind of like hung around on the side. She was like a non-dancer who like wanted to be in it. So she was like kind of younger kitten, wanted to be in the action, but like wasn't quite there yet type vibe.
So I'm fascinated. Did you do like a full production? Like how long?
Oh, yeah.
Full 2.5 hours of show?
Full show.
And you have every cat and more.
And more.
And there are like, so what was the cat that's like essentially I always joke that if I played in any performance, I didn't do anything growing up because I was playing sports, didn't do any of the theater stuff, but I would have been the tree, which is like the joke of like, I would have been the one that just stands there and has no lines, no movement, no nothing. Did you have a cat that was like essentially the tree? We had several. Like a lot. I mean, it was like, I don't even know how many people we had. We had a lot. Like we had a big ensemble. But we also had one of my friend's dads was a welder. And so he helped build this like humongous scaffolding set that we could like climb high on. And so like we had a ton of cats like up in the rafters, like just like lounging. But it was a very like choir focused school. So all of our songs and like choral moments were like insane because we had so many people who weren't exhausted from dancing, like belting out to the heavens up in the rafters of the scaffolding. Yeah, it was pretty crazy for a high school production, I have to say. You had the booth before the booth was like
literally.
Like, you had like an extreme
on-stage booth.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by different productions. I know there's a junior production about to happen in my hometown, and I'm like, what do you do in a junior production? Like, how do you explain the ball? Which is, like, do you explain the ball, or just like, hey, just dance to this number, ignore the fact that it's supposed to be an orgy, like,
right?
Like those, like, so the high school version's even harder because you're at an age where you're going to get all of that, but they're not telling you this, I'm assuming, right?
Definitely not. I think to us it was like they like marketed it as like a huge party celebratory thing, and they took all the sexual innuendo out.
Do you have like a playbill from that? Like, did everyone get listed by name?
I think so.
I'm
pretty sure I have the DVD somewhere, and I'm pretty sure like the cast list has like everyone and their cat name like on the scrolling credit.
I'm hoping by the time that this comes out, you have found this to share. Because
that's my mom. She's got to have it somewhere.
I want all the different cats' names. I want to know who else you added, because there are some like weird ensemble cats, and then there's like all the swings have different names throughout the years.
Yeah, like I think they probably took some names from the Naming of Cats song that aren't like, some of those are like inspired by.
But I want to know all the other ones. Like, and then I want to know who came up with them. Like, did your friend get to come up with Cinnamon, or was it just said?
No, I think she was given Cinnamon. I'm pretty sure.
I have so many questions.
I'll have to ask her. I'll text her after this.
I have so many questions for your theater director too, of like who just sitting at home one day, just like, okay, I've got 8 more cats to name. What can I come up with? Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. So you are at that point though, you're still doing, whose choreography are you doing in that high school production?
His name is Scott Michaels. He runs the Wagon Wheel Theater in Indiana, in Warsaw. But yeah, so it was his version from like beginning to end. So it's none of really the original choreography, more just like, lightly inspired by the styling of Gillian Lynn, like.
Yeah, I'm sure you have to make some adjustments too, not just because of a high school production, but you're going to have different stage. You're adding a bunch of cats. You just have way too much going on. That is, so I'm assuming they didn't split like some of the characters like Gus and Bustifer and are together. Yeah, no,
they were each the completely own cat. Yep. No split tracking happening.
That poor person who had to play just Bustifer.
Yep. He loved it. He was great.
I love it. These are fun. I've heard of college productions. I hear some, but like I never get to kind of ask because I can't find who's done them. Like they're not published online. Like there's no like list of who's done cats in high school. And it's so fun to hear like that version because it's such a bizarre show to begin with that to try to
it was a hard one to get people on board with too. I think like it wasn't like we're doing Beauty and the Beast. It's like cats, and I'm pretty sure most of the boys were terrified. Like the minute they heard dance belt, they were like, what?
Yeah. Do they stick them in unitards too?
Yeah. Like, I'm going to be in unitards in front of all my peers. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But honestly, everyone, like I always say with cats, you kind of have to drink the Kool-Aid and just like buy in, and everyone bought in. Like by the end, like we were so proud of that show. Like, I don't even know. It was very special.
Was there any, like, now that you've done it on tour, like at least, you're given a lot more of the story. What from that high school production was like, oh, that would have never worked in the true Cats world? Like, did you have any like relationships, not relationships as like high school relationships, but like these two cats ended up being great friends in the high school production, but like in real Cats world, they probably would have hated each other, or there's some other like weird nuance to it?
Not that I really remember. I feel it felt pretty similar to me, honestly. At least my part, maybe because my character was more defined. I didn't have like as much wiggle room there as maybe Cinnamon did on the side. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the time, I felt like a professional when I was in high school, and it felt very real to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. Looking back, like I had similar feelings even being on stage playing the character. Like there was a familiarity there.
So now fast forward to going on tour or auditioning for a tour where you're like, all right, here's how we did it in Wisconsin. You know, like did you lean into your experience, or was it something where it's just like, I gotta start fresh?
Probably a little bit. I mean, at that point it had been like over 10 years since I did it. But growing up, I feel like most little girls, when they see cats, they want to be the white cat. They want to be Victoria. Yeah. Like, it's just that, like, that was not it for me. Like, I, from day one, wanted to be Bombalurina. Like, McCavity was my favorite song. I was drawn to her on stage. In the movie, she was my favorite. Like, I always felt a connection to that character. And so when I was going into the audition, I was like, this is mine. Like, it's funny. People used to make fun of me because they would be like, oh, we should do this in the fall. And I would say, before they even announced auditions, I was like, oh no, I won't be here. I'll be on the Cats tour. And they're like, haha. I was like, no, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm going to be on the Cats tour. And it's like one of like the first things I like vividly remember manifesting it actually happening. Like, I was like, nope, this is mine. Like, I walked into that room and I was like, it is mine. I'm taking it.
That is awesome. So tell me about that process. Like, what was it like? 'Cause it seems so foreign now with everybody I've talked to not post-COVID, but like since the pandemic. It's a very different process in general. So this is like, bring me back to that, it's on Broadway and you're about to go on tour.
Yeah. So when it was on Broadway, I was actually on the road with Bullets Over Broadway, I think. And I remember being devastated that I wasn't going to be able to be there for the auditions for the Broadway show. Cause I was like, oh my God, they're bringing Cats back and I'm not there. And I was non-equity at that point, and I was just devastated. And so then when I heard that they were doing a tour, I was like, okay, this is it. This is my chance. I'm doing it. And so I went to the ECC and went through callbacks, like a couple rounds of callbacks. And then we were in like that dance camp week that I think a couple other people have talked about on here, where it was intensive, like 10 to 6. You'd find out the night before if you were coming back the next day. Like, it was insane, but amazing at the same time. And I'm technically too short to play Bomb, according to the character breakdown, by an inch. And I will never forget, I was singing in front of Andy. I like sang through McCavity and I did it all. And he goes, how tall are you? And I was like, 5'7". He's like, okay, cool. And I walked out. I was like, oh no, I'm out. I blew it. I should have said 5'8". But it ended up being fine.
Yeah. 5'7"-ish, 5'8"-ish.
Yeah.
It is interesting because it's like there is over time. I just was talking to somebody else on the show. I don't know if it'll come out before or after, but we talked about how in the early time of Cats, it was very specific about like, you've got to be at least this tall, or you've got to be this age or personality, or like you really got to have that like innocence to be Victoria. And now it's like, I think they're a little looser. It's like, you know what, let's get the best performer for the role. And like, as long as it's close or it's ish, we can kind of work the rest as it's theater, and they're Cats. So it's a little different. But I've noticed that because like you get younger Grisabellas than you used to have, and you get younger Jenny Anydots than you used to have. So it is an interesting piece. I'm glad it didn't cost you the role.
Same.
But with that moment where you're like, you probably walked out being like, oh no.
Yeah, I was terrified. I was like, oh God. And like, it was just because he like specifically asked. I was like, okay, so you know that I'm too short, but like, hope it's okay. I don't know.
But maybe. Okay, so you get cast. You get the job. What's that process like with learning the story? Like, I'm fascinated by the story piece, especially you've seen it, you've done a different version of it. You did the party version, not the high school PG version or PG-13 maybe version. What's that like, that first moment when you're hearing the full story?
I mean, for me, it was magic. Like, I don't know. I feel like Cats is a very polarizing show. You either love it or you don't. There's a very few people that are kind of like, yeah, it's fine. Like, I don't know. It's very polarizing. And so for me, having like grown up my whole life loving it, it like hearing and being involved in it for real was like pure magic for me.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything that surprised you? Like how much, like when you're hearing the full rundown, all the relationships, all the stories, all the cats, were there things where you're just like, whoa, I did not expect that. I didn't know that. I didn't think about that. Like what was new to you?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I was such a Cats nerd that I feel like I like knew a lot of it. Yeah. I'm sure there were a couple things, but I can't really recall any.
So did you know all that in high school though? Like, did you know a lot of those like nuances? Like, cause I knew none of this stuff until 2016. Actually, until I started this podcast, I've learned stuff over time. But like when I saw it the first time, I didn't know that was an orgy. I kind of figured out that Victoria was having a coming of age on stage. Like you can piece some of that together, but you really don't piece a lot of it. And
yeah,
then I've heard these things, I'm like, wow.
I knew all of that, but I probably didn't fully like actualize into my brain until we were doing it. I was like, oh, like I knew that was the plot, but now I'm like, I get the plot.
Mm-hmm.
No way.
Okay. So what was the, like, what was told to you though? Like, you obviously knew a lot of this, but like, what was the direction of like, here's what you need to know about Bombalurina. Here's what you need to convey. And here's the relationships you need to like really work on stage.
Mm-hmm. Well, my 3 words that Chrissy gave me they actually surprised me, were generous, voluptuous, and frank. And, you know, like Bombalurina and Demeter, they're like the sexy cats, and Bombalurina is like the more feisty, potentially like meaner one. And Demeter's a little more reserved. And I think having generous, I think was the one that surprised me the most with her and changed the way that I like viewed her interactions with the other cats. And it gave her a warmth that I think could easily be missing in her like feisty cattiness a little bit. Yeah. So that one really resonated with me and like completely changed how I viewed like interacting with other people or other cats. Voluptuous was like, that was like, you know, that was pretty normal. And then the frank was like, yeah, just like pointed to the point. She takes no bull. She's just like, this is who I am. You take it or leave it. And that was like kind of it.
Yeah. The frank and the generous kind of almost are a little contradictory in itself, which makes it, I'm sure, kind of hard of like, there are moments where you have to be, okay, hold on, I got to be a little bit more open here than I should, but I've also got to be like quick on it. Like, how did that play out in certain moments? Were there moments where you're like, oh, I've got to really lean into one of those words versus the other word?
Yeah, I think she's a lot more generous and warm around the kittens. And then with the older cats, I think she's kind of like, all right, you know, cut it out. We're the adults here type situation where she's like, I'm not taking your crap. I'll take it from Mungo Jerry and Rumpel Teaser, the little, you know, little heathens, but like Tucker, give it up.
Yeah. Okay. So now you're going on tour. It hasn't been on tour in a while at this point, I think. So what was the reception of like, okay, we're bringing back cats. Like it just come back. It's kind of new. It's not the Jillian Lynn choreography. It's coming back with Andy's choreography. Like what was I never got to see it. I was supposed to go see this in April of 2020 in Indiana. And obviously that didn't happen. I still have the tickets. I found the tickets. But like, what was there are the super fans. Like, was this a surprise to them that it was a little slightly different with different choreography? Like, what was your reception early on in the tour?
I think great. Like, we were sold out almost everywhere we went, which was crazy. And I had just come from another tour where it wasn't that way. And so for me to like see full houses every night, I was like, wow, like this is really cool. You know, you'd see the people in the audience dressed in full face makeup and full unitard, and that was crazy. We get fan art sent backstage, like really cool. Yeah, my favorite part though is like watching the little kids' faces in the audience. Like, 'cause we had a lot of times when we'd go out into the house and like interact with the audience.
Yeah.
Which is normally my nightmare as a performer. I hate breaking that wall. It just makes me so uncomfortable. And every single time a cat was asked to go in the audience, I was asked to go. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. But I actually grew to really like it, mostly because of like getting to see the little kid like faces light up. And it's just really cool.
Did you have that moment where you're like, oh, this is me from five,
yes.
when I was a 5-year-old all the time, right?
All the time.
So one thing I've argued on this podcast a lot, and I'm lessening on it, but only to a degree, is I don't think kids should see the show. But I think I'm different on that now. Of like, there's a cutoff of an age. So I'm like, 5, great, go have fun, you're gonna love it. But I'm like, where's the moment where it's like, wait a second, I'm gonna recognize the abuse of McCavity and the like orgy of the ball and some of these other things where it's like, this is probably a lot to take in. So I'm like, what's that cutoff where I'm like, I think it's like 14 to 18 where I'm like, all right, stay home. Like, let's not expose this group to this just yet. Like, let's let them become an adult before we make them see the show.
Yeah, I have to disagree, but I think, you know, having done it in high school, like a lot of that just goes over your head. And like, I feel like you can still follow the story without realizing those things.
Yeah.
Like, and I also feel like we notice them now because we know the deep backstory that we're told. But I think a lot of that deep backstory sometimes like is not visible to the audience, unfortunately.
I guess it's fair. That's totally fair. I saw it as an adult. I saw it in 2016 for the first time. So I was a full adult and I was like, this is a lot. This is a whole lot. And I'm like, my mom brought my sister and I'm like, did you really bring either of us to this as a kid? Like, did we really see this? Like, you know, like that, like I'm kind of questioning parenting here a little bit, but now I'm like, all right, I'm softening on this stance a little bit. And then hearing all the, like, I went to the tour this past year and I did get to see, like, a friend brought their kids and then their niece and nephew and they were super young and they loved it. I'm like, okay, I get the magic of theater and the disbelief of like they're cats, you know, it's not, they're not humans, but I know too much, and as I know too much, I'm like, no, we shouldn't be telling the story to a 5-year-old.
True. I just
like your song
I think
alone.
most of it, yes, I think most of it goes over their heads, though. I really do.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit about some of the relationships you played on tour. So, like, what were there's obviously the Demeter relationship, but what were some of the other ones that you've kind of had to formulate over time of like, all right, I got to lean into this one, or we've got a little extra story here, or a little bit like nuance there.
Tugger was a big one because we interact a lot. We partner together. We like lay on stage in each other's sweat together for like 10 minutes during Victoria Plato duet. You know, and like they have some snarky, playful, bantery interactions where it's like, you're so annoying and yet I love you type vibe. So that one's fun. Trying to think. Demeter was like, I was very protective of her. Who else?
What about Grisabella?
Grisabella, I think I understood her more than some of the other cats, I think, because they talked a lot about like Grisabella was potentially with McCavity at one point, and maybe that was the reason she left. And so I, you know, was talked about that, like I went off with McCavity and came back. And so we had a similar like trauma bond that I understood a little bit. So like I was also talking like Bomb is like one of the younger leaders of the tribe. She's like influential around the kittens and is, you know, not as high up as like Monk, but she's like, you know, a big presence among the tribe. And so I think trying to like protect the other kittens, almost like in like a cautionary tale type of way, was like how I kind of interpreted it.
Yeah. So was it it's not a mom vibe between Grisabella.
No.
It's more of like
I think it's like the cool aunt vibe. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, the cool aunt that went a little too far. And then you're like,
exactly.
Oh, wait, if I'm not careful, I might follow this path.
Yeah. And I think part of her anger towards Grisabella is also like almost in like perceiving a weakness in her of like, I did it and was able to come back. So why weren't you type thing? And I think that, I think there's probably like a hurt there and a vibe between them where she's like, you were weak and I wasn't.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like there's so many different ways to like think about where'd Grisabella go and what's her relationship with the tribe and who she's actually, there. And I have never felt the mom vibe, but I have felt like the aunt's a good example where it's like, all right, or a friend, like this was your friend and that was lost. Like you were together doing a lot of this stuff together and they went too far one way and you got your life back on track.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. What about some of the other like, because Bomb kind of is, to me, flirts in the middle of where she's not one of the adult. She's not like the Jenny or the Jelly Lorm or anything. But she's not the kittens either. Mm-hmm. So she's like the mature of the teens or like the middle of the age kind of demographics. So how does that, like, do you have to think about that when you're on stage of where it's like, all right, I'm going to have this moment with Bustifer or with Monk or with like one that maybe is perceived as older, but you're kind of not quite there. Like, how was that like at all thought about? I guess my real question is just like, how much of this did you all think about on your tour bus of the story that's not like given directly to you? Because you have to have all those, you have to fill in and improv a lot of these moments between like what you're given as court, like you've got to be here at this moment. You've got to say this thing, but you've also got to fill in a bunch of other parts.
Yeah, I think in terms of age, it was pretty easy for me because I felt like I was playing my own age almost. Like I was 26, 27 at the time. And, like I felt like that's where she was. Like very like, she's like mid to late 20s. Like she's an adult, but like a young adult. And so like, how would I interact with children? How do I interact with 40-year-olds? Like kind of just, it felt, that age felt natural to me, I guess.
Yeah. What about the other like cats? Like how much did you improv? Like how much did you have to kind of think through those? And did you have like any weird, okay, wait, we shouldn't be friends, but we are because we get along really well as humans, like?
Yeah. Yeah, probably. There was, a lot of improv. I mean, we did a whole day of just like learning how to be a cat and like our felinity physically. And so then taking that into like, how do you act these certain moments with that physicality? So like that was a big part of my improv. I was like, okay, if I'm tired right now, how is a cat tired? And how do I make that into this moment?
Interesting.
But I definitely had our Play-Doh and I got along really well. And we had a few moments that probably were like not, like we probably wouldn't really know each other that well, but like we got along. So we, had those moments. What else? I also really loved when swings were on. That was really fun to like have a new energy to interact with and like, oh, how do I feel about this energy? And that type of thing was really cool. Where some people I know, definitely. They like their moments. And if the swing doesn't do that moment, they get mad. Now I like having been a swing now, I'm like, okay, that's not realistic. And also like, it's more fun to like keep it alive. And this is a different cat.
Yeah.
They're doing the same positioning,
I'm surprised by that because I would have thought the opposite of like, if you're doing the show that many times, the same thing, the same dance, the same number, that like having some freshness of a swing coming on and like giving you just a slightly different take probably almost makes it like, keeps it from being stale.
For sure. And keeps you on your toes. It makes you more aware during the whole show versus going on autopilot.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died. All right. I love asking this question because it seems like tour is just chaotic. So tell me some, like, what memories do you have of like the weird, the fun, the like craziness of tour where like, I've heard stories of the tire didn't go up or this didn't happen. Like what are some of the ones that like really stick out to you?
So many. That was, what was it? The final season of Game of Thrones was out, I think, when we were on tour. It was like coming out. And so there was like a group of 6 of us. It was like me, our Jelly Laura, our Jenny, Demeter, our Gus Bustifer, and our Grizz were like the diehard Game of Thrones people. So like every Sunday matinee, we would just be like amping up to watch Game of Thrones that night. And so we would literally like run around stage and at times like flap our wings like a dragon at each other, or like, you know, just stupid things like that are like very memorable to me for that show in particular. What else? Yeah, you know, the tire doesn't go up. That happens, but those I don't really.
Wait, so this was like, if it's the final season though, there's hot takes on that. Like,
oh yeah,
what was that? How was that to watch those live in random cities across the country with, you know, your friends?
It was so fun. We got shirts that said Sundays are for Westeros. Like, we were obsessed. It was so fun.
That is, yeah. I was not in the United States at that time, and so I was watching. I was in Sydney and Singapore, and they did watch parties at our office because it's a full 12 hours later.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You can't watch it live. And so we would have the same thing. And I'm like, this is fascinating to like watch a group of people in this like office setting, figuring out how to get a copy of it, hopefully legally, to stream, to have to watch later. So I can only imagine you all watching it live, like crowded around a hotel room or a bus or that type of thing.
Yeah, we always like someone hosted every week. Like the whole week would be theorizing, like in the dressing room, like, oh, what do we think is going to happen? Like,
yeah,
I mean, honestly, it like made the build up waiting for the episode that much better.
Totally. Did anybody notice your flapping? Did anybody call it out? Like,
I'm sure they did.
Nobody like at the stage.
We were very subtle.
Like we had a cat dragon today.
Yeah, we were very subtle. I'm sure people noticed.
I hope when someone listens to this, there's some amazing cats artists that like. Did you ever get any Game of Thrones crossover? Art?
No.
All right, I'm hoping if someone's listening, there's artists I would love to see some of that. There's some like, I'm surprised you didn't get it because there's so many. Like, I know you said you got a ton of fan art, but you probably need to just scream about that louder. You would have got some really cool stuff. Honestly,
probably.
Awesome. What other fun stories do you have from tour? What else stood out?
Trying to think. Honestly, like our cast, like it was crazy, but we were all really tight because of the crazy. Like, you know, I have a really close group of friends that I'm like still in contact with today from that show. You know, we all go to each other's weddings and do trips together, and it's just, I don't know, that like I'm trying to think of like specific moments from tour, but the thing that always comes back to me is just like the people. Like I can't think of a specific moment because there's so many that just revolve around these people.
Yeah. Do you ever bust out any of the choreography at the wedding?
Maybe a little bit of the gel cabal at our, our Jenny actually just got married a couple months ago, and her dad in his father of the bride speech, like made all of the cats stand up, and we were like, oh my God, this is embarrassing, but it was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. I can just imagine you all like doing part of a number on the dance floor at a wedding in normal.
Yeah, we'll bust out the gel cabal a little bit.
In normal human clothing, you know, just like,
for sure.
Yeah. I love it.
I will say for a long time after tour, I had trouble posing without a paw.
Yeah.
Like in all photos, I like have a paw next to me. I'm like, what am I doing with my hand? Like, get back to being a normal human being.
Yeah. I've heard that from a lot of the performers. If you've done it for more than a year or two, like you're doing it so often and so frequently that you'd be like, even like when eating between shows, you'd have trouble not making the mannerisms.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't fathom it. Did you have to go on when you were on tour? Did you eat in like makeup between the two shows, like in Cat, basically?
More towards the beginning, like when it took a longer to do our makeup, and then like, you know, I got my makeup down to like 20 minutes. So after that, I was like, at some point, I just wanted it off my face.
Yeah.
So like, I would take it off in between shows so I could leave the theater and like go out. But yeah, there were times when I was like, I don't want to leave, and we're not allowed to leave the theater with our makeup on. So you're either like ordering food into the theater or you're taking it off to go out. So there are a couple times we'd order in and just like chill, but
I just imagine you all go into like a diner in full makeup, like between shows, just like we're going out.
That was called half cat, and you're not allowed to post in half cat. You're either full cat or no cat. There's no half cat.
No half cat. Half cat's not allowed.
No half cat.
I love it. Okay, let's do some rapid fire.
Okay. Oh God, I'm scared.
If you could go on for one character, one night, doesn't matter if you're the right height or gender or whatever, just you get to go play one night. Which cat do you want to go on as?
Bombalurina.
You want to go back? What if I take her off the table though?
Demeter, I guess.
So you just want to go to the other side? Just want to do the other half of the song?
Yeah.
Okay. What about from the high school production? If you could go be any non-cat, any new cat that your high school created, who would you want to be?
Oh.
Do you remember any of the names, or is it just Cinnamon?
Honestly, pretty much just Cinnamon.
Okay. Never mind. We'll
Only because she's like my best friend still to this day that I remember.
Who are your favorite and least favorite cats? So ignore actors and performers, just character-wise.
I love Tugger. And I love Gus.
Okay. That's great. That's great for my final question, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about least favorite?
Least favorite. Oh, I don't love Skimble, I think.
Ooh. All right. What's the rationale?
I just think he's bossy.
Yeah. Is that how many, just even thinking through that question, how much of that is influenced by being Bombalurina for so long versus like you as Lexie?
Probably a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm also like, even as a person, I'm not type A at all. And so sometimes type A people like can rub me the wrong way. And I feel like Skimble is like very type A, and we just probably wouldn't vibe.
Okay. What's your favorite song from the show?
McCavity. I'm biased, but it always has been ever since I was a little kid. Yeah. I do love Tugger though too. Okay.
I love it. McCavity's my answer right now still. It was Mungo Jerry and Rumple Teaser when I first saw it, but I've figured out why I like that song so much later on as I've recorded more of these. But I think the answer is McCavity for me. I just think the song's so unique. Song. Yeah.
It's the best one.
I always like asking fun questions. So I have one written, but I'm going to add one to it. So I'll ask you the one I had written first, which is your tour ended because of the pandemic. So which cat do you think would have been the best prepared to survive March of 2020?
Jenny Any Dots.
Oh, that's a good answer. I would have thought Bustifer. I just feel like he's
he's probably hoarding food.
And loaded. Yeah.
But I feel like Jenny's got like a bunker, and she's like, she's ready.
You're probably right. You're definitely right. Okay, my other fun question that I'm adding now because of your high school production.
Okay.
Which cat do you think is probably thriving most in high school? And which one is struggling most with high school?
Oh. Mungo Jerry's thriving.
Ooh, okay.
He's like the cool guy. He's bringing the booze to the party. He's like popular, fun guy. And then I feel like Victoria's struggling.
Okay. I like that. I was thinking differently. I had to think of these quickly, I think Bomb is thriving. I think she's like almost Mean Girl-ish style, like running the show, but
I feel like it's similar to Mungo Jerry in a way.
Yeah. And then I think the one that's struggling is probably Mustopheles, because I'm not sure Magic is landing in high school. Like, I think he's going to become cool later in life, but I think he's probably at the moment struggling. And that I feel that. Yeah. Okay. $1 million question.
Okay.
I've already argued at length that I don't think Grisabella should be the right Jellicle choice. So I want to hear from you as Lexie. If you're Old Deuteronomy, who are you sending up and why?
I would pick Gus, I think. I mean, I love him. I already said that. But I feel like he deserves it. He's been a good person. He's served his debt to society. He's old. He's not healthy anymore. Like he's ready for a new life.
I agree. I have nothing to add here. I'm ready. I'm just glad that was the answer.
Do most people say that or no? I feel like that's a very obvious choice.
So right now it's really I've been keeping track. I do have a full ranking, and Grisabella has just under half the votes. She's got in the 40s. Gus has in the 30s. So it's pretty much a race between those two. So it's like, if you're either going to stick to the plot and you're going to say Grisabella, or you're most likely picking Gus. And then there's like 10 other people that have gotten votes that are just for various random reasons. And they're usually hilarious and they're usually not thought through at all. Or they're just like some fun ones. Like I've had somebody that was like, I want to get rid of Bustifer because he's just a strain on the tribe. And so it's like, that's going to be what's the most valuable. There's some people that picked the cat that they played. You know, it's like I played this cat. Here's why I deserve it. But nobody's got more than like 4 votes. So it's pretty much a two cat race here.
Okay. I mean, I understand why Grisabella is chosen.
Same.
But I don't like it. Yeah, it should be Gus.
I agree. So
let her even back into the tribe for 1 more year and then let her go.
Totally. It's like, go to a birthday party or something. Like you just got accepted back.
Exactly.
That's been my argument recently too. Okay, wait. So, and actually, I think it was your Grisabella who said Bustifer, by the way. So, yeah, which was made me laugh. It stopped me dead in my tracks. I'm like, wait, why? No one's ever said Bustifer. Like, why would you say Bustifer? And I was like, no, it's a strain on society. I'm like, oh, that's probably
sounds like
true.
Harry.
Yeah. So, okay. So I want to ask this question though, because I agree with you on Gus. So if I take Gus and Grisabella out, let's pretend Grisabella doesn't come back and you pick Gus this year. Who's next year?
Probably Jenny.
Jenny? Okay.
Or Jelly Lorem, honestly. They're both, I feel like, right up there where they've lived their life. You know, they've been the motherly figures of the tribe. It's ready. They're ready.
Yeah. And who was last year?
Oh.
I have what I think the answer is. I don't know if there's any truth to it.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's Victoria.
I mean, that makes sense. She's like the new soul coming in.
Yeah. But I also think
she's white and pure.
Yeah. Was this ever discussed on your tour?
No.
Okay. That's why
but that's a fascinating question.
Yeah. I'm not here doing the Jellicle Lord's work, trying to get this conversation into the
I love
world. So, this has been super fun. How can people stay in touch with you, keep up with everything you're doing, and what's next?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's lexie.plath. Yeah. If you like to read books, I'm on TikTok at Reading in the Wings.
Ooh, all right. Give us a book recommendation.
Oh, well, what kind of books do you like?
Well, I mean, let's go for the audience. So let's do something that would be, what would a Cats fan book recommendation be?
Oh, man.
Like if you're at the stage door and someone come up to you and they're just like, send me a book. What would you say?
I feel like Cats fans are probably into fantasy. I don't know why I think that. Maybe it's because
I think that's probably fair, right? It's like it's a world created. Yeah.
I don't know why. My first instinct said Caraval by Stephanie Garber.
Okay. What's the best book you've read recently?
Oh, recently? Where's my notes?
And then while you're looking that up, did you read the Time War or whatever book that went all over Book Talk?
I have not yet, but it is on my list.
Okay.
Oh, the best book I read recently was Beach Read by Emily Henry.
Okay. Written a ton. She's written a ton of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like this part of the episode, follow on TikTok. If you have no interest in this, then follow on Instagram.
Exactly. Or both.
Or both. Yeah, follow both. Why not? You'll learn something new. Pick up a book. It's good. Thank you so much. This has been so fun.
Thank you. This was great.
Awesome. And thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at The Wrong Cat Died, or check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.